Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. My name is Tom Dutta, like Butta, and well, we're going to do something creative today. We have a guest scheduled, and this sometimes happens. The guest hasn't quite entered the studio, so I'm going to take this as an opportunity to do something I've never done before, but record a promotion short that we can weave into the final production. So you're here on the Quiet Warrior Show. What is it? It's live streaming. Live streaming is the next generation. I call it leveling up in podcasting. We're live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. See the hands going there? It's because social media is all over the world. I'm trying to show you that with my hands here. And that is awesome. We produce this. It'll be produced and released later as a podcast on all international podcast channels, wherever you enjoy your podcast. And also a YouTube live production, which will be a reveal or a premiere video, as we like to call it. Our guest today, and if we don't have her on, we'll use this as a promotion video, as I mentioned. There might be a difference in daylight savings, I'm not sure, but we're going to continue on here live, is a lady named Michelle Rapkin. Now, I'm impressed with Michelle. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She's a 3-time cancer survivor. She was first diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2000. Are you shaking already with emotion? She's intimately acquainted with the ins and outs of cancer. She's a graduate of Cornell University. She spent over 30 years in the publishing industry. Get this, everyone. She's worked on hundreds of books, including more than a dozen New York Times bestsellers. She's the editorial founder of Crossings Book Club, and she lives in Ocean Grove, New Jersey, just steps from the beach, her happy place. That was my attempt as a Canadian on the west coast of British Columbia here to be from New York. Now, I understand also she has a little dog by the name of Maxie that hangs out with her. So we'll be looking forward to having her on the show. Let me just add in a couple more things before we wrap up this intro. We're going to be sharing, I'll put it on the screen here, her book, Cancer Sucks, But You'll Get Through It. Now, I'll tell you, I've read it. I'm going to be revealing a special review for it. And what's awesome about the book is, let me give you a heads up on some of the things that are in it that we might talk about. Why cancer sucks. She calls Earth versus planet cancer. She refers to these two entities, which is very clever. How do you know your doctor's an oncologist? How do you talk to your parents and your children? She's going to give us 10 tips for communicating. And also, there's a list in the book of 29 things. Everything I need to know I learned in treatment. And one of those that stood out for me was she learned to take time to listen to children. Now, how many of us in today's world, and maybe reflecting on our past life like me as a traveling executive in my life, when my daughter was little, think back about, boy, I wish I'd spend more time with my children. And it gets better. She has coined the phrase, become the CEO of your health. Well, certainly in her context, and always get a second opinion, but how do you know if your doctor is an oncologist? She's going to talk about that. We get into other little nitty-gritties that maybe aren't as comfortable for those who have or haven't had cancer, I don't know, but hair loss, cold caps, cooling ice and gel, nausea. What's that all about? Taking naps. Fatigue is invisible, she says. Things happen with your skin. Neuropathy, that's damage to your hands and feet, the nerves. And then there's the big part, which I'm a big advocate because I'm a neuroscience specialist, is sleep. How does that affect when you have cancer and you're in treatment? She talks about weight management, a big one, managing pain. You know, some of the things she talks about in the managing pain section in her book, Cancer Sucks, But You'll Get Through It. She's developed a new philosophy. I only dread one day at a time. I just love that. But I reflect on this piece that this could apply to anybody who's dealing with pain in their life. And how do you know when you're coping? How do you know you're coping when you've never had cancer before? Think about that. That's a real evocative question, everyone. But that could be applied to other things in your life. How do you know that you're parenting your child when you've never had one? Are you doing it right? How do I know that I'm doing the right things recovering from a brain injury, which I had in 2018, which I'm much further past now. Many of my followers, you've heard about that. Mental health is a big one. When it's about mental health, we're talking about depression, anxiety, and these things are threads in everybody's story. But 3 times cancer, one of the biggest questions I have that I might be asking Michelle is the bigger question is about, well, what's it like? Talk about your feelings, tears release toxins, etc. Chemo brain activities to counter that. There's a thread of faith in there. It just goes on and on and on. Handling the holidays, list of documents to prepare, humor, helping your friend alongside, staying with guests, going out. What do you do? And things to remember when you're down, good things that will happen resulting from chemo. Think about that. Good things that will happen as you result from chemo. How's that even possible to have that mindset? And my biggest question is, do you ever go through this, especially if you've had multiple events like this, do you ever go through this wondering, hey, I'm just wondering, tell me about, how do you deal with it in your mind if you're wondering, will this even come back? Saying goodbye to treatment, that was in chapter 10 of the book, which I loved. And helter skelter, although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of overcoming it. Oh, that's Helen Keller, a quote in the book, got me thinking. Think about cancer returning, and there's a glossary of 4,000 terms. She's taken a bunch of terms out of that, put it in this book. This book is loaded with resources, a web product, websites, videos, children's books, and all of that. So it's absolutely phenomenal. So this will be something that we'll use as a promo video that we'll add into the show. And I'm going to need to check again to see if I have Michelle coming into the studio. All right, Michelle, welcome to the show. I just saw you there.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. I had trouble.
That's okay. Welcome to the show. Did you enjoy the promo video? Because
yeah, the promo's great.
All right, welcome back. Now, you're probably wondering, what was that? Well, that was a bumper video I put together. And for those who are on the podcast, Michelle, who can't see the video, you'll be able to watch it when we do the YouTube premiere. I'm taking a doctoral degree in Middlesex University in London, and I've been involved in that since last September. And it's one of the bucket list things in my life. But why is that important is I've created this segment for the show called Plato's Garden. So we're going to put something on the screen here. And so what is Plato's Garden? There's a picture, Michelle, if you've heard of Plato, many people, being an author, I'm sure you have.
Sure.
Yeah, so Plato's Garden back in 427 BC, 347 BC, was an Athenian philosopher during the classical period in ancient Greece, the founder of the Platonist school of thought and academy. The word academia, that's interesting. And the first institution of higher learning in the Western world. So what we talk about is we talk about the influences of context, and there's 3 words there, Michelle, and I'll just help you understand this so it's an easy conversation. There's the macro world. When we say macro, we talk about what was happening in the world around you as you started encountering this thing in your life called cancer, and it goes back, I know, many, many years for you. The second area is what we call meso. So what was happening in your industry or your profession? You may have been doing something with your life as a professional. And 3 is the micro, which is personal. What was going on in your life personally? And all of this together, if we do reflective thinking, it's called critical thinking, Michelle. We connect the dots in all these things. We really get a deeper meaning of you and your story. So I'm just going to lead you into this conversation and make it comfortable for you. So we're going to remove that off the screen for a minute. Why don't you just go back to the micro, which is about you. Go back in time and start at the beginning, where this all began in terms of your journey into this world you call planet Cancer. And what was going on in your profession in the real world around that?
Well, I was working as an editor at Random House. So I was very busy in that job because it's 24/7 almost, and you have to love it, which I do. I was also a newlywed. I got married at the age of 45, and my diagnosis came when I had just turned 47.
Wow.
So I was getting used to married life, which I was very happy about, but it was big. For the first time, I had to go home and make dinner for someone else instead of just have Cheerios. So there was a lot going on, and it was all good.
Let me just jump in there and riff with you. So we're about storytelling here in Plato's Garden. So I want to first of all say thank you, and everybody that we're with Michelle Rapkin, who is an author, 3-time cancer survivor. We're here in Plato's Garden having a conversation. Michelle, going back to it took me back in my mind. You're 45 years old. You were diagnosed with your first cancer, which we'll get into, I'm sure, in more detail. And I like what you said about instead of serving Cheerios for yourself, you're having to cook dinner for somebody else.
Yeah.
Why don't you take us back into that moment of the diagnosis and what was that like to experience for the first time cancer? What did you go through? And how did you deal with communicating that to the person in your life or the people in your life?
It was a total shock. Actually, I was having just a routine test with my general physician, and he said, everything looks good except I found this little ulceration where it shouldn't be. So don't worry, don't call me, I'll call you. And 2 weeks later, the phone rang at the office, and it was my doctor. And honestly, I couldn't figure out why he was calling. And then he said, "You've got to come back for more tests." And I actually said, "Well, I will, but not until you tell me why." And so he was forced really to tell me that I might have cancer, or I might just have some dead blood cells that didn't look so good. So I walked into 2 weeks of testing, and so I left the office right then to go for tests. And when I went home, I don't even remember telling my husband, but I'm sure I did. Really, I wrote in the book that I felt like I'd been dropped onto a planet where I didn't recognize the landscape or the living beings, and I didn't speak the language. It was just total confusion.
Wow. First of all, I want to honor you and say thank you for sharing this. I'm sure you've had to share this story so many times, being a 3-time cancer survivor, and each time I can understand, especially understanding emotions and brain science, that in some ways, you relive that emotion. In your book, there's so much. So, do you have a copy of the book with you there?
I do. Okay.
Well, there you go. So, Cancer Sucks. Look at that. Perfect. It's a beautiful book.
Thank you.
And that just came out, right?
Yeah, March 12th.
Oh, amazing. I hear a friend there. Is that Max?
That's my friend Maxie, my little dog, and she's.
Don't worry about you can put the book down again.
Okay.
One of the things I love is that I wrote a note here, ask you about Maxie. What kind of dog is that?
Oh, she's a little mixed breed mutt that I adopted from the streets of Manhattan 14 years ago, and she's my pal.
She's a welcome on the show, and you know what? Just let's keep it real. That's what I like about this is have her there. You can what a sweetie.
Say hi, Maxie.
Hi, Maxie. I'm sure you might be able to hear Maxie.
Be quiet now, Maxie. Okay.
All right. Michelle, just comparing a little story here. I had a miniature Shih Tzu Shadow, baby Shadow. She was 16 years. She lived past her prime, but she passed. She used to be right here below my chair when I was doing my show. So seeing your Maxie, I'm living vicariously. So thank you.
Oh, that makes it so sweet. Maxie is 14, and I've told her that, she's got to stick around.
Yeah. So getting back into Plato's Garden, everybody, we're here just learning more about this story. In the book, there's so many things. I said at the beginning, there's a laundry list of things. We could spend 2 hours with you. The first one was doctor versus oncologist. Tell us about that. You talk about how you can tell if your doctor is an oncologist. Give us a couple thoughts.
Oh, well, actually, those are sort of some jokes that I have in the book. I try to I tried in this book to really go into body, mind, and spirit, and delve into that for people who are dealing with cancer. So I wrote, he tries to explain to you why a low grade on your report is better than a high grade. He talks a lot about trials, but as far as you know, he's not a lawyer or a judge. He asks you if you want to have a port, but he's not offering you a drink. So I try to keep some humor in this book too, but in the right places. There's a whole swath of emotions in this cancer journey. So I wanted to include them all.
Well, thank you. And Michelle, one of the things I enjoyed, I've read the book cover to cover. I read the Kindle version. I actually use a reader because I have some visual impairment from my concussion. And one of the things I really enjoyed about it was the humor. And having gone through depression myself when I had my concussion 5 years ago, we know what the humor does, releasing certain chemicals in the brain, and I really appreciated that. Don't worry about Maxie there. We'll be just fine with that. Hey everybody! I used to, back in my days of being a business executive, chief executive officer at one point. Do you remember doing Zooms with your team? I had teams in different parts of Canada, and I had my little dog, and the dog would be barking, the kids would be running around, you'd be going, shh, quiet, shut. And now we've come full circle, Michelle, with COVID-19 and post-COVID and a new world. And you know what? People just accept that it's actually refreshing to be having life appear in front of us. So if you need to take a moment to tend to Maxie there, just let me know and I'll just keep rambling. Going back to the book itself, there's a piece in there about telling others and then becoming the CEO of your own health. Get a second opinion. Tell me a bit about that.
Okay. Well, in terms of telling others, I needed some time to absorb the news before I was ready to tell anyone but my husband. And that was okay. The timing is right. When it's right, but the time does come when you need to tell others. And I suggest actually writing a few bullet points out, or having them in your mind. And if you're calling someone, this was before texting, of course, say, do you have a few minutes, or give me a call when you have a minute to talk, because what you don't want to do is blurt out this huge, terrible news and have someone say, oh, I'm so sorry, but I have a house full of guests and we're eating. Can I call you back? So, you can say as much or as little as you want. You don't have to answer every question fully. You can just to keep it in your control is the main thing. I didn't tell anyone until I knew for sure I had cancer, because and then I only told a few people, because people do want to know how you're doing. But all of a sudden you're in the middle of all kinds of appointments and tests and hospital stays and this and that. And the last thing that you have time for is to answer a million texts or phone calls. So I started out small and enlarged my circle as things developed.
I think I read somewhere in the book that there is a period of time where there is a diagnosis or there's testing and things, but you don't quite have the real goods yet. So how does that play into when you tell somebody? Some people would say wait. Some people would say wait till you have all the facts, or what the second opinions and all.
Well, for one thing, you don't want to worry people unnecessarily. My doctor said it could be cancer or it could be nothing, it could be just a little irregularity. So, but also, it's the more you know, the more you want to keep the conversations down anyway. You've got too many other things going on. So, telling people should be totally in your control. That's really
Thank you.
the main point.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so helpful. And I was thinking about the threads in this book, about how there's so many things in the book, as I mentioned up front in the intro, that you could apply to other parts of your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
This is one of them. It could be not just about your own diagnosis, but maybe something else that's as significant as this. Just going to add to the screen here. You can see my other camera in the studio here. I've got a piece of a book here. I've got copious notes from this book, everyone, and so I'm just going to refer to it. You said something about CEO of your health. Tell us, what do you mean by that?
Well, to be honest with you, I feel like this is overall, in terms of the macro,
Yeah.
I feel like this is one of the most important parts of the book. So there I am, with all of a sudden my body has betrayed me. I'm powerless over it. I don't have as much control over my time because I'm always at appointments or being poked and prodded. I don't even have control over what I'm wearing. I'm usually wearing somebody's hospital gown. And I was feeling that way. And then at one point early on, I thought, actually, the minute you were diagnosed, you were named CEO of a major health concern, and that's yours. And nobody has more to gain or to lose than you do here. And so you're not powerless. You actually have, like it or not, you have been put in a very powerful position. And that sounds really daunting, but in fact, to be a good boss, you do your homework. You make sure that you learn what you need to know. Then you hire the best experts in the field that you are going to be pursuing for your treatment. And then when you interview people, because you're the CEO, you're actually hiring, you're choosing who's going to be your oncologist. You don't have to go to the first oncologist you see. In fact, insurance companies pay for a second opinion when it comes to cancer. So if that's the case in the States, it's a good idea. And then you have a basis. One thing that I learned was, does this person treat me the way I think that they would treat their spouse or their child or their parent? Or do they listen to me? Will they explain things until I feel like I have a grasp on the answer? When you're interviewing with an oncologist or anyone, it's the first date. So it's not going to get better than it is right then and there. And this is going to be a long relationship. You're going to have a relationship with this person for a long time, even when you're just going for checkups. So it's very important to choose the right doctor and to remember you are the final decision maker. Yeah. And, power, a feeling of power, I think it energizes mentally and even physically. A feeling of powerlessness, to me, is very draining, and it makes me just want to go to sleep. So, and talk about transferable. I mean, it could be cancer, it could be any illness, it could be really most situations in your life.
Absolutely. I just want to jump in there and riff on that for a minute. So the one thing that strikes me when I look, everybody, we're getting a bit of a show from the dog Maxie there. We just had her on screen. She's cute. So don't worry about Maxie there. You know what? This is just part of the show that I'm enjoying. You. She's probably talking and telling us. She's probably contributing, saying, "I read that book too, and I have something to say about it."
She's not going to go out though. I'm listening to you, but let me. No. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, if you do need to let her out, please do.
Thank you.
So going back, everybody, we're just in Plato's Garden here, and then we're talking about the story of Michelle. Michelle, just quickly, what kind of cancer was it again, for those who don't?
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay, and so you were diagnosed at 47, and then for a long time. Just tell us the timeline. So you went into remission, and then so you've had it 3 times, right?
Yeah, I was diagnosed in 2001. And I went into remission at the end of that year. And I stayed in remission for 16 years. And in 2017, I had some odd symptoms that I went to the doctor for, and it had returned 16 years later.
Wow.
And I went in, I had treatment again, went into remission, and it came back in 2018 at the end
Yeah.
of the year. But now I'm in my 5th year of remission.
Oh, that's amazing. We're just going to give you a big round of
Oh, thank
applause.
you. That's so nice.
Again, I put myself, for those listening to the podcast, you can't see it, but I've put them on the screen here. And if you're watching the future YouTube premiere
I will.
release we're going to do, you're going to see that I have another camera in the studio and I've got some notes here. Just drawing a timeline. What's remarkable to me, and I'll just remove that off the screen, is playing this back just so everybody can visualize this. Married at age 45, 2 years later, age 47, diagnosed with the cancer. 1 year of treatment into remission, 16 years, no cancer. 2016, came back, treatment, etc. 2018, back again, third time, and here we are in 2024, and your cancer, you're in remission. In the book, they talk about definitions, and I didn't understand always terminology. So what I find helpful of your book is terminology. So you explain what remission is.
Yeah.
But I got to say this, and it's a compliment to you. You've got such a great disposition. You're smiling, you're happy, and you would never know. And I'm just going to add this to it, that many years ago, I had another woman on my show. She was 12 or young. No, it was her mother, and her daughter had cancer at age 12. And in the book, she had written about the experience being alongside her, Michelle. Her daughter just didn't believe she had cancer. Her daughter was like that little dancing around, happy-go-lucky. So there is a big part of this for mental health and mindset too, right? That if
Absolutely.
what you believe you can manifest. Tell us about that, because you obviously, even when I've introduced you, you said, I'm here and everything is great. Tell us about, how do you keep that mental mindset when you have in the back of your mind sometimes, do you think this will happen again?
Yeah. Well, going back to the very beginning, when there were 2 weeks where I might have cancer or I might be fine, I
Yeah.
started out so worried. I would close my office door and just go through the web, and I just read everything there was about, because I knew it could be non-Hodgkin's. And then I would go home and just, go through the motions. And I had this thought, Michelle, in 2 weeks, you're going to get an answer. And if if you do have cancer, you've just added 2 weeks to your bad phase because you've worried for 2 weeks. If you don't have cancer, you've just wasted 2 perfectly good weeks. And the outcome is not impacted either way. It's going to be the same.
Yeah.
And that really helped me, and it still does. Which isn't to say that I don't worry, but I've got some techniques for my worry to deal with it. But for the most part, if I'm healthy, I have a roof over my head, my mind is working, it's a good day. And shame on me if I don't appreciate that.
Thank you for sharing that. In the book, everyone, Michelle, let's give another plug. Hold that book up again so we can see it on screen. There it is. Just read out the title. We love to hear the author read their own title.
Cancer sucks, but you'll get through it. Trust me, I've been there.
Okay. I'm going to do something here. You can't see it, but I'm going to add to the stage the actual Kindle version of the book. So everybody, you can see if you're in, buy the book, and Michelle will tell us in the end where to get it. But she's signed a copy that I'll be receiving soon. But I had to buy Kindle. But I want to go to just the beginning. You can see the contents here. Michelle, I'll just ramble for a minute. Introduction, just diagnosed. You've just been named CEO. Part 3, your body. Part 4, your mindset. 5, humor. 6, well-meaning family, friends, strangers. 7, staying home and going out. 8, top 10 lists. There's some cool lists in there about, for example, music to have chemo by, movies to entertain, complementary and integrative therapies, survivor, saying goodbye to cancer, and it just incredible. So I just want to bring us back, take that off the screen here. It is such a treasure trove of resources. before we go further with the story and a couple pieces from that list, you wrote this book. I also noticed in researching you, this name Terry Whalen had popped up, who I actually kind of know. You've been in the publishing industry a long time. Why? What level of pain, frustration, anger, hope? What was the emotion you went through where you said, "Darn it, I'm going to write a book about this"? And why did you do it? And what do you intend with that?
Again, after I visited my doctor and had those tests, the day that he called the first time to tell me something was wrong, what did I do after those tests? I went straight to the bookstore and went straight to the cancer section. And there were a ton of memoirs. There were a number of books about specific cancers that were very medical, heavy duty, but there was nothing there that just said, oh my gosh, how do I find an oncologist? What questions should I ask? How do I tell my family? How am I going to choose a treatment? None of those things. And I was very disappointed. And honestly, the reason that I wrote this book is that it's the book that would have helped me a lot that first time that I learned I might have cancer, had it been on the shelves. And it wasn't there, so I wrote it.
I love it. Again, we would give you a round of applause for writing that book.
You're wonderful.
I was reading in the book, and I'm a faith-based man. I mean, Jesus Christ is a big part of my life. When I fell on my head and had a brain injury in 2018, if you had met me back then, I couldn't speak properly. My gait was not working. I couldn't orate. Wow. I still struggle with a bit of double vision and light sensitivity. Most people don't know that unless I talk about it. The reason why I honored you for what you said is in my faith, and you've written about faith in your book, so you can certainly talk about that. In my faith, when I got sick, I turned to the Lord. I turned to pray because I was lost. I turned to what you just said. I was Googling online research on brain science, trying to find my way. I couldn't find a book like yours. And then I discovered going through therapy for mental health, particularly depression, that one of the things that is really important, that you can find your way to the other side of things if you connect to people, but you find something purposeful to be in service to others.
Yeah.
And I'd like you to talk about that when I give it back to you, Michelle, is that when I hear about the book you did, here's what I want to say to you to honor you. That I think your book is a bestseller if somebody reads it and there's one thing in there that gives them hope and that changes their life. What do you think about that?
I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more.
All right. That's look at the smile on Michelle's face, everybody. And that's why you need to get the book. Authors their work doesn't get known unless you read it. Post a review on Amazon, Goodreads.com, etc. But it's such a powerful book. It does refocus on some of the lists and things, America. However, this, I'm in Canada. This is an international show, but most of it is applicable to anyone. And certainly now that I've read it, I can go out and use what you've done and find my own resources in Canada for cancer. Oh, good. I want to share with you just a really crossover thread. My brain goes in different directions here, and then I'll ask you to talk about something that I noted here, which was let me just pull up my paper. Sorry, just find my way here.
Take your time.
About managing pain. We'll get into that in a minute, because now that we know the journey, that it's interesting that I meet people through my show, and I think God sent you here for a reason, Michelle. Do you know how I had my fall and my injury? In 2018, this is an absolute true story. I was doing what's called a Ride to Conquer Cancer. 2 days on my bicycle. It's in Canada.
Wow.
We do 225 kilometers on my bicycle. So that's about 125 miles. Never did it before. This was August 2018. My dad had just passed away 6 months before from a heart attack in his home quietly. So I borrowed a bike of my buddies. I trained, never had a bike, never rode that distance. His daughter had leukemia when she was 12. She passed. And he started this ride with his wife to do something to build this whatever, giving back. And they were ready to cross the $1 million fundraising mark that year. So he said, over a beer on my patio. Tom, do you want to ride? And I said, sure, Roger. And he said, okay, it's this month. When I got to the starting line, and I trained hard and I was in great shape when I got there, never had cancer, but know a lot of people who did, like yourself. I stood there as the sun came up and there was 2,000 bicycles. I looked to my left and right, 2,000 bicycles. Half of them had yellow flags. The announcer got on stage, Michelle, and they said, okay, look around you and look at all these yellow flags. Those are people who are either battling cancer or have had cancer.
Wow.
Michelle, I was riding that ride and I never complained anymore because there were people passing me on my bike and I was kind of like shaking my fist going, why I oughta, and they had a yellow flag on and I would get to the 20-kilometer pit stops to go get refreshed and talk to some of these people and say, what's your issue? And, I'm in third round chemo and they're riding this bike
Amazing.
ride. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, amazing.
That's why people like you, I believe, are godsends. You're here doing God's work in the world and you were given that cross to bear, I believe, to do what you're doing. So congratulations. Where do you know Terry Whalen? It's just a name that I came across.
Yeah. I met Terry Whalen decades ago at a writers conference. And he's a pillar in the industry.
He is. I won't mention names because I don't want to plug other publishers, but he's a literary agent or something. He definitely is. My first book published through a publisher where he works, and that's how I got to know him. And I actually, shameless plug for my show, but somewhere in the archives, you might want to listen to it and give me feedback. I did an interview of Terry, and it was called The 10 Myths of Publishing.
Oh, I will definitely listen to that.
And there's fascinating things. Everybody, if you want to write a book or know how to take a story and write a book, read Michelle's and copy her philosophy of what you do with your story. Amazing. Let's get back into the story again. And Dog Maxie, we just want to say thank you because you're doing amazing.
Yes. Verbal.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get back into just a bit about from the book or whatever you want to say about managing pain, because people who've had cancer might understand. Most people don't. What are some of the things, techniques?
Well, for one thing, sometimes we assume that we make assumptions. And in this case, one being that if you have cancer, if you're in treatment for cancer, you're going to be in pain and you've got to keep a stiff upper lip. And you know what? Painkillers were made for a reason. And of course, they have to be used wisely, sparingly, under the auspices of a doctor, all of that. But I was surprised to learn that the body has so much energy, a certain amount of energy, and it has to figure out how to use that energy. And if your body is fighting pain, then that's energy that's being taken away from healing. Your body can't necessarily do two things at once when it comes to this. And so tell your nurse, your doctor, tell people when you're in pain, because a lot of progress has been made in terms of reducing or pain, and that goes for nausea. I would get so nauseous, and my doctor gave me a little pill it's called Zofran. You just put it under your tongue. It's like nitroglycerin, and it's amazing. My nausea would pass within seconds, and I went back to the doctor and said, why does it work so fast? He said, because it's actually going straight to your brain and telling your brain to pretend that you're not nauseous. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, absolutely. That's remarkable.
Yeah. So really, don't wait for your doctor to ask you if you're having physical issues. Offer that, tell that, and see what kind of help you can get. Also, I'm a big fan of lists and journals, and keep a pain journal, because if you can identify a pattern of your pain, that can also help your doctor or nurse figure out, what kind of treatment to give it. The most important thing though is just do not be a martyr. Pain, yes, we all experience pain, and yes, pain is involved in dealing with cancer in many cases, but it can be minimized if we just go to the right, go talk about it and get some help.
Yeah, thank you. And if you want to bring Maxie up on your lap there, it makes, is it a him or a her?
It's a her,
If
actually.
it makes her more comfortable, we'll welcome her onto the scene here. Now we have another guest, a furry friend.
Yeah.
Going back to what you said, I want to just tell you why it touched my heart. It actually connects to a thread in my story again. And that's really, everybody, when we tell stories or narrative, that's the power of my show, and why I think in life our brains remember stories, narrative more than just facts, figures.
Right.
You see, Michelle could have written a book, come on here and said, facts and figures. Here's, the percentage of people get cancer, the percentage that don't. Here's facts, more figures. There's no connection, but when there's a connection that hits emotion, when I feel something, oxytocin in my brain is flowing. That creates trust and rapport and all these things that I know. And so I want to hey, Michelle, why don't you stay a while? I want to learn more from you. And so you're seeing the power of this interview, and why taking a story like hers, which was tragedy turned into, triumph in many ways, is a really important thing that she shares. Going back to the pain journal, when I had my brain injury, my first interaction with a neuroscientist, they said, describe your headache. I'd never described my headache.
Yeah.
I was like, I have a headache. No,
Right.
Describe it. And the same thing when I went into psychiatry for depression. Describe. Michelle, I learned one thing, that when you're in depression, it's the one area, psychiatrists of medicine, where they don't actually touch the body part they're treating, which is the brain.
Right.
So it's like the person on the other side of you is saying, tell me, describe, and their brain is taking that info, and then they're thinking about what they learned in school or whatever, medicine, they're coming back with the diagnosis, with the treatment. See, I never thought that way before. So one of the things everybody in the book, it talks about, Michelle mentioned, was about pain journal. You said, I wrote this down here, you said pain journal 1 to 10, label it 1 to 10, which is exactly what I had to do. I had to label headaches as, are they medium, mild, or extreme? And then I had to be able to say things like, the headache radiates in a band around my head. This book that you've written that I really enjoyed, and we're telling everybody about, cancer sucks, but you'll get through it, actually gives you these techniques about how to actually work with and manage the pain. So we'll be talking about journaling and things. I want to touch on mental health, but as I do that, I want to also, I know you're at the time when you said you're married and you had to communicate this to your husband. Just tell us, if you're comfortable, how did you walk alongside somebody in your life who's your husband? Is he still with you, or?
No, my husband died in 2008. So we were only married for a little over 10 years, but he was my present from God, and it was a wonderful time, and my life is still better because of that marriage and him.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. There it is again. I mean, that positivity. And by the way, we honor what you said. We're sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Looking back at my paper in the timeline, 16 years, you were diagnosed in 2001, 16 years without, married at age 45. He passed age 53. It's like, wow, that adds more to your story, dear, about how you actually navigate that. But going back to that, how did you, if somebody's with someone, they're married, how did you walk alongside? Any tips on that? Because I know when I was crushed with the brain injury, I didn't realize, but my wife suffers as much. And they told me that she's going through it with you.
Yes. People who are, now I understand. My husband was, he was very ill for a relatively short time. But it was during that time that I understood, when you really love somebody, you go, I wish it was me. Like, there's nothing you can do for that other person in terms of, a magic bullet. But, I have a section, I'm not sure if this is answering your question, but I do have a section in the book about family and friends and what you can do to help. and what you should do and what you shouldn't do, what you should say to your friend who has cancer and what you shouldn't say. Don't say, wow, you're really lucky. It's just that kind. It could be a different kind, Um, but my husband was, he was very, he was very proactive. If he first of all, he was also a great man of faith, and so I know that he was relying on God, as was I. Not not so much for a cure. I wasn't sure that I would be cured. Bad things happen to believers, and
Yes.
we're not immune from
Yeah.
life, and this is part of life. But
Absolutely.
I prayed for peace, and so did Bob, and for wisdom, and
Mm.
but he also took care of himself. And
Mm.
I think that's a big thing for someone
Yeah.
who's walking alongside of you,
Yeah.
is if you are so busy seeing to the other person's needs, and if you empty your own gas tank, you're gonna be stuck, and you're not gonna be able to help anyone, yourself or your loved one. So
Yeah.
I
Thank
think
you.
that was big.
Well, first of all, thank you. We honor you again, and I'm sorry for the loss of Bob. I'm glad you said his name because wrote it down here. What's his name?
Aw,
And I'd like to, as I produce the show, not offer, but with your permission, dedicate the show also to Bob, who I
thank you.
think is a hero, was a heroic figure, a
Can I show you
protagonist.
my wedding picture?
Absolutely. Let's full screen it so we can get that on there. Oh my, where was that?
That was in Grace Church in New York City, Grace
Oh,
Episcopal Church.
oh my goodness. Now
Yeah.
I have been to New York once, but whereabouts would that be? That location compared to say
It's in
downtown?
in Greenwich Village,
Okay.
just east of Fifth Avenue on 10th Street.
And what did he do for a living, or did he have a profession?
Yeah, well, he spent most of his career in the military, but and when we got married, he moved to New York City for me. He was out of the military, and he worked for an airline as the
Yeah.
liaison between the airline and military charters around
Wow.
the world.
How did you and Bob meet?
Oh, that's another show. But I was visiting a stranger who I had met on a plane. We'd shared a 9-hour flight, actually from the Frankfurt Book Fair, which is a big publishing event once a year in
Yeah.
Germany, back to New York, and we started talking. And 3 months later, I was at her house for the weekend in Tennessee. I'd
Wow.
never been in Chattanooga before, and I had breakfast with her and her husband and her husband's business partner. And 2 years later, I married the business partner. That was Bob.
Oh, that's a great story. I
Yeah.
was, I was reading the book, and they say everybody does for their own timeline, and they have their own mindset about how much they include in their story. And I was looking for some more about who's this guy. I mean, how did he get through? Let me make a couple comments, and then we'll get back into the last segment of the show as we move through the latter stage to wrapping up. We could have you back again for sure. There's so much we'd like to
Great.
talk about. Let me just put on the screen here again, everybody. The image, if you're on podcast, you won't see it, but if you're on video, you'll see it. That's a beautiful book cover. Cancer sucks, but you'll get through it. It's got 2 coffee cups. Just describe why it says what it does there
Mm.
on the front.
Well, you mean it says, "Trust me, I've
Yeah.
been there."
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first coffee cup doesn't have anything on it. The second one, it's one of these Starbucks kind of looking
Yeah.
brown cups. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's because it's more fun to drink coffee with someone than alone.
okay.
And
Ah,
sometimes really serious stuff gets said over coffee. And it's always great if somebody with experience can give you a few pointers if you're new at something. And I was new at cancer, and there was no other coffee cup there. So
yeah, it's a clever cover, and bravo for that. It certainly gets attention. I like the color too. It's
that's the
pleasing.
publisher. They did an amazing job. The art director, all
That,
him.
that's fantastic. We'll make sure at the end you get to tell everybody where to get a copy of that.
Okay.
You said something so important when you were talking about Bob and the journey, that everybody, what I took out of that personally was somebody told me when I was going through my own recovery from that brain injury and my wife, by the way, 28 years we've been married.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. And my background was an executive leader, CEO type person. We met in the banking industry.
Wow.
And in COVID, she works for one of our biggest banks, still working. And they closed the branch she was at. She's in management, and she has a home office. So every day I'm in my studio now, and she's behind the wall there. I get to be that close to her.
That's great.
But when I went through my injury, I was a strong kind of Bob. If I gather what you said, he looked after himself. I was that guy, became a shell of myself. And what I realized is there was a period of time where I kept trying to worry about her. Is she okay? Is she okay? But what you said was so insightful. My words that were put your oxygen mask on first.
There you go.
And that's what you were telling us, is that you had to really, with your mindset, focus on, you had to do your business and at the same time be alongside Bob. And
yes.
So everybody, that's a hard dance to do. So read this book. You're going to get some more nuggets out of it. And maybe that's another book coming down the road. Who knows? And let's go back to my notes here. And the last piece I want to talk to you about, which is saying goodbye to treatment. There was a quote here from Helen Keller: although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of overcoming it. Thinking about the cancer returning. Talk to us about this whole piece, saying goodbye to treatment.
Well, you look forward to the day that you're going to finish treatment. And then, at least for me, I approached my last chemo session a little bit hesitantly because, I'd gotten used to being pretty comfortable with the fact that even when I was sleeping or eating or anything else, my body was full of, poison chemo pumping through and killing all those cancer cells. And all of a sudden, I was going to be on my own, and all that chemo was going to dissipate and not be replaced. And then what? I sort of felt like I was being pushed off in a little rowboat by all the people who had taken care of me. And it took some time, and it really did take some time for me to re-enter the fullness of life. And part of that is physical, because you may finish your treatment, but it takes 3 to 6 months, at least it did for me. And I had at different times surgery, chemo, and also a large immunotherapy treatment. What you want is no evidence of disease at the end of the scan, and I call that NED, NED.
Yeah.
And that is the result that you want, which is remission. And oh my goodness, I just lost my train of thought. Wow.
Yeah, no evidence of disease. We'll just pause here on NED. If it comes back to you, that thought, just bring it back. But I think that was a part that, as I read the book, that's really what struck me towards the end. It was such a journey, because I've never had cancer, but I've certainly been around people and experienced their emotions. That, as well, let me just, and I'm not comparing here. I can only draw on my experiences in life. My father was in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, for 26 years. He was a pretty bad alcoholic. He left home when I was 12.
Wow.
And I remember saying to my dad one time, because we only reconnected just before he died, and every day, did you ever think that, the disease is always there, but that you would be back, in those horrible moments, that you would fall off the wagon? And cancer, I was just trying to figure out in my head, oh my gosh, I worry too much. Just so you know, these muscles in my face, when I smile, they get sore because I don't smile a lot. And that's my personality. And my wife always tells me that. She says, some days you're miserable. And I go, yeah, I'm proud of it. That's who I am. I wear it on my sleeve. But Michelle, it's such a gift. But that was what I was thinking about as the end of the book came about, how remarkable it is. But that's the power of faith. It's the power of mindset. Everything you taught in the book, everybody just hear me on this, that you can change in a heartbeat what you think and how you feel. And you're looking at somebody here, I think, who is remarkably able to do that. And so that's why you need to learn from Michelle and her story. And there's others out there that, I'm sure that are nodding who've been through this. As we move to giving you the last word, is there anything you want to say to the audience? Words of wisdom, advice, tip, little story, anything at all as we move to wrapping up, Michelle?
Oh, wow. Gee, I just want to say that, we all face our huge issues. Mine has been cancer. I'm no stranger to depression. We lose someone we love. And, Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist and also a prisoner in Auschwitz concentration camp, wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And in the book, he says that ultimately, we only have control over one thing. Human beings really only have control over one thing, and that is how we will respond to any given situation. And that that's been very powerful for me. And so I guess I would encourage your listeners and viewers just to remember that, they have choices, they have power. And as we talked about a little bit earlier, we didn't get too much into it, but if you're a person of faith, that's going to be a big help. And if you're not, maybe you should just read a little bit, explore a little bit. You're gonna have lots of time to think a little bit. But yeah, I'm meandering.
No, it's great. It's great advice. And as we prepare to say goodbye, it's always emotional. And
Yeah.
that was authentic. And I like what you said in terms of faith. You know what, everybody, I have a relationship with Jesus Christ. My faith. Everybody has a relationship with their own faith, whether you are or not. Doesn't matter. You said something really insightful, Michelle. You said start reading. It was actually through the loss of my dad and then my brain injury that I picked up a Bible since I was a kid.
Is that right?
What it taught me in the Bible, because the Bible, and I think you might agree, tell me that the Bible is really parables and stories written by others who are around Jesus, because there's only so much time he was on the earth. And you know what? By reading it, they call it the Word. It taught me how to be kind, be forgiving, love people. I never saw that demonstrated by my father. And so growing up in my life, I had some problems. I went through first marriage and I had some challenges with how I related to people. And I never really understood. And even in the Bible, when it talks about people who have had diseases and things, one thing you said, which really made me smile inside, is if you are into your faith, that doesn't mean you're not going to die from cancer.
Right.
It absolutely doesn't. Right? The faith doesn't promise that. So pick up the Bible, or if you can, everybody, and just read it. But now I want to move to the last segment, to where we're going to honor you. And I'm already getting used to Maxie there. And I don't find it hard to say goodbye. I mean, I'm not going to edit anything out of the show when it comes to Maxie, because that's
Maxie, did you hear that?
Because what will happen. This will be playing in households all over the world, I'm sure, and there'll be dogs going like,
Who's that?
And they'll be hearing Maxie out there. So I'm going to put another camera on the screen here again. And this time I'm going to see if you can see this. So you're getting an award today. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't.
All right. Well, this is the award. It's called a challenge coin, and I'm holding it up. So the front of the coin, these are hand painted, crafted in the United States. The front is the image of the show, and there's it's raised, beautiful. And then the back of it is actually, if you're familiar with Joseph Campbell's work, the hero's journey narrative, the actual detail of that narrative.
Oh.
Which really, everybody, is about what we're seeing here in the hero's journey narrative. It's about learning there's threads connected to other stories, and you hit a wall in your life, and you go seeking, and you take this dark night of the soul, they call it, to search what I'm going to do with this. And Michelle did that. She searched 3 times cancer. She wrote a book. Now she's dedicated her life to continuing to work with authors and her own work, but to serve others through the book. So you're being inducted into the Quiet Warrior tribe or community. So welcome aboard.
Thank you. That's such an honor.
You're welcome. And we'll put a little on the screen here. Let's see if I can find.
Oh,
There it is. Some fireworks for you.
that's so great.
All right. So congratulations. So tell us where people can get a hold of you, the book. There might be a website or anything you want.
Okay, well, I've just joined Facebook because of the book, so that people can be in touch with me. I'm Michelle Rapkin. I'm going to give my email address out. I'm sort of old-fashioned, so
Sure.
mrapkin@mac.com, Mac, like a Mac computer.
Yep.
And honestly, don't feel like you're alone. Don't feel like, and if you feel like you're alone, email me or get to me on Facebook. The book is available on the web at, the various booksellers, also at some, hopefully, brick and mortar stores. And if not, just they can order it for you.
That's awesome. I want to just read out loud off my paper here. Thank you, Michelle, for connecting us. Wow, that's amazing, giving out your email. Let's create a tsunami of emails to show the love. I write these words down on my paper as I'm interviewing the guests. These are words to honor you. They're leadership words. They're not scripted. And so these are the 4 words that I attach to you in this show. 1 is heroine. You're heroic. 2 is happiness. It just comes out of you. 3 is maven. And I'm sure you may know of, but the book
I totally do.
Yeah, in the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, they talk about a maven. So if you want to know something about cancer or getting through it, you see Michelle's picture. That's the maven. And 4 is love. It comes out of you, and it's just your smile. It's everything about you, your aura. And Bob was a lucky man, so is dog Maxie there, and all of our listeners and viewers. Just blessed to hear from you. So everybody, I'll announce as I close here also that I've read, as you know, the book from cover to cover. I am giving it a 5-star review. That'll be posted. That'll be posted very soon for you, and we'll be creating an image, a JPEG image, which I always do, which will be added into the show. You'll get a copy of that to use for your own purposes. So congratulations on your international Canadian review, eh?
Thank you so much. And thank you for this. This time has just been such a gift to me, Tom. Thank you. And you have a new viewer and listener too, because I'm sure that I want to hear more from you.
Yes, shameless plug, everybody. I never ask because I'm too humble. Go to YouTube and subscribe to the channel. That's the video piece that we're building. Subscribers matter to help us get word out about Michelle, but also the podcast, wherever you listen, subscribe to it. And Michelle, don't go away as I wrap the show up. Just stay on and chat with you for a quick minute.
Good.
But thank you so much for blessing us and being here. Welcome to the community. We're connected for life. We'll have you back.
Thank you. I'm so glad. Thank you so much, Tom.
You're welcome. Everybody, find that true purpose like you've seen here from Michelle. Live with that passion and live the life that you deserve, desire, and we'll see you all again on the Quiet Warrior Show.
Thank you for listening to The Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca.